All right, here we go. We are back live Monday morning, already the 5th of July. Hope you had a fantastic 4th of July weekend. I'm JD Green. Welcome to Aired Out, brought to you by The Uncommon Market, Barslow Construction, Granite City, MMA, Emsley's Florists and Gifts, K&W Tire, Gauthier's Quality Grounds and Maintenance, Fontaine Forestry and Millwork, Wright Electric, Salvador and Babick, Donnybrook Fight Promotions, Central Vermont Chamber of Commerce, Wright Electric, I think we mentioned them, Vermont Custom Woodworking, Aeromed Essentials, and retirementvt.com. If you're just joining in, if you're just tuning in for the broadcast today, we are live. It is 9:38 on the 5th, and we want to say right off the start here, if you like the podcast, just tell your friends, follow the page, click like, post up a comment, a question, and most importantly, share. We always are looking for more insight, more thought on today's subject, which is about Ralph Jean Marie. Also known as Riz, I think. Is that right?
Riz, yep.
Yeah. So I have with me, I'm going to call you just Rebecca because I'm just going to be safe with that one. Rebecca Ronga from Invisible Productions. Do I have that right?
You do.
How are you?
I'm good.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Raylene is sitting right next to you. She's our producer here at Aired Out, and we'll jump in a little bit on the conversation. Let's talk first about Invisible Productions and this documentary that you're making. You've partnered up with Anthony. Tell us about Anthony.
Anthony is a filmmaker. Invisible Productions is the umbrella. And this case, this documentary about this case is really under that umbrella, but I've never done a missing person case or anything like that. So this is very new to us. The documentary about Ralph Jean Marie really started out as just kind of a, what the heck,
Yeah. But you had never done a documentary before.
I have participated. I've not been involved in this capacity before.
Yeah. So how did you meet Anthony? How did the two of you come together on this?
Anthony is working on another project, and I was participating in that project. So that's how we met. And Anthony, I believe, became aware of this case through one of his contacts through, I believe activism or whatever. So learned of the case and then sort of just kind of started snowballing from there. And so people that were interested sort of just jumped in.
Right.
And then there is a group, a Facebook group, I guess.
Yeah, the disappearance of Ralph Jean
right.
Marie.
So that's separate. That's not the documentary. Yeah. But, of course, we've gleaned a lot of information from that group. And so, there's some people that join the documentary sort of group as far as helping out in different ways. But specifically the production of the documentary is Anthony producing that, filming.
And you're on more of the face of it, the media of it,
absolutely,
the spokesperson, the Correct. PR, everything.
Correct. Yeah. As well as creative collaborator, definitely collaborator on the investigation side of it. I do the interviews for the documentary.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say it's Anthony and I pretty much. For the most part, we definitely have some support. There's a small group of the community that is supporting us, helping us out when we need it.
All right. Raylene, you know the
this
drill.
Community or your...
Partly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
the deal here is we just jump in anytime, Raylene,
Right.
if you've got anything, you just jump in, cut me off. But first off, let's just say this: we've just met for the first time. We don't really know each other. I haven't had a chance really to chat with you too much off camera. Are you friends? Were you friends with Ralph? Did you know Ralph? What about Anthony?
Neither of us knew Ralph. Yeah, no, we didn't know Ralph. Didn't know his family. Didn't know anybody attached to Ralph. So,
what sparked the interest in getting involved with this case?
I feel like anybody that knows anything about this case has to have some kind of, flicker in their brain or their heart that says, what the heck happened to this guy?
Yeah. I mean, that's the $1 million question, is what happened
and
to
the more
Ralph
you
Jr.
know, the more you know, the more you get that question of, what? He didn't disappear by himself that we know. It just doesn't happen that way.
What else do we know? I mean, we know the basic facts of the date. I think it was in April. Wasn't it April or March, I think, when he disappeared?
Mm-hmm. So we have a date. I believe it was the 13th of April. Yeah. But do we have a date? That's what's been alleged.
Right.
The last time they saw him, we don't know the accuracy of that statement.
Sure. And he was leaving a local motel.
That's what the story is, that he was in an argument with his significant other, or this is what she alleges, that she and him had an argument, and he walked out of the hotel room, sort of having a tiff, and she expected him to come back.
Okay.
And so walks out of the hotel room, and that's the last time she sees Ralph. And she claims that's at 1:00 in the morning on, I believe, the 13th of April.
Okay. What else do we know? Do we know that he was? We know that he was involved with some drug use. We know that he was involved with.
He had a circle that was definitely involved in all of that. Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. There's, as Steve Pappas said the other day, and I want you to reflect on that if you can. The editor from the Times-Argus, who we were just chatting about this on the show the other day. You got a chance to watch that?
I did.
There's so much speculation. There's so many rumors flying. What about this? What about that? And some of this could be smoke and mirrors, but some of this could have some truth to it. And deciphering between the two is the challenge.
Oh, yeah. Law enforcement has had a big challenge in this case. One, he wasn't reported missing, until 2 days, I think, almost 2 days later, or 60 some odd hours later.
Sure.
That's a big gap of time. And that's if the last time he was seen was actually, 1:00 in the morning on the 13th.
On the 13th, right.
We don't know.
Is right. That
There's
could
a
be
lot
just
of
when
question
somebody asks
about
question.
Right. There's a lot of question about just those statements about who saw him last and when. There's no way to know. So
who have you? How many interviews do you think you've done so far?
Myself, I've done
about this case.
So interviewing people or subjects. I myself have done at least 5 or 6.
5 or 6.
I think 5. Yeah.
Do you know who they are off the top of your head?
I do.
Can you tell us, or would you rather let that come out in the documentary?
That's going to come out. Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
Fair to say law enforcement?
Yes. Well, yes, that's something that's out there. We have interviewed law enforcement, and certainly it's been put out there on Facebook, on their webpage,
Okay.
So we have collaborated
Sure.
with them on getting information out to the community.
Sure.
So during, that video, I had interviewed both the head detective and
Okay.
Chief Bombstier.
Okay.
Mhm.
I was in touch a year ago with Fabi and Barbara, two family members of Ralph.
Yeah.
Interviewed them here on Aired Out almost exactly a year ago. And at the time, they seemed frustrated that more information wasn't coming out because a lot of time had passed between April and June 30th when they were on the show.
Right.
But they were also seemingly quite appreciative of law enforcement at the time and basically said they're doing all they can. But I think there was a bigger question at the time, as several months had passed. Have they done all that they could have done up until now?
Right. I mean, it has to be considered that as the family of the person that is gone, don't have any answers, there must be a considerable amount of frustration and loss and pain that builds up over time of not finding out answers.
Agreed.
And so, to say how they felt then and how they feel now, I'm sure that it's been a roller coaster of feelings about how they felt
Right. Anger
starting
sets
out
in.
Sure.
and where they are now. And to be honest, I don't know where they are right at this minute because I haven't spoken to them in a little while.
Yeah.
But I think that it's hard to say how they should feel.
Sure.
I mean, I think they're the ones that are
Yeah,
really
we
the,
can, yeah, none,
the
yeah,
ones
no
to
one
say
can
how they
say
feel
that.
about how it's gone. I think that I'm sure hard for them being away, so far away, and not being right here to see, to, talk with investigators face to face, though they have in the beginning.
Fabi just texted me this morning saying we have over 1,000 people in the group, the Disappearance of Ralph Jean Marie Facebook group. They can't come and say what happened to Ralph. This is getting to be very sad. Those people were not his friends at all over a year. Still nothing. Whoever knows something, say something, please.
And that's where the bottom line is that his friends weren't his friends and somebody does know something, and how to get that from some people
Absolutely right.
could
So
possibly never happen.
right, we can say we don't have any information and nothing's happened and it's all the police fault, but I mean, there really isn't a lot
Right.
of information because
Mhm.
my personal belief is there's between 2 and 5 people who know exactly where Ralph is or what happened to him.
Okay.
Or more.
I agree.
Or more if somebody leaked, but I really don't think these people are leaking anything
No.
because I feel like we would know more by now. We mentioned rumors spreading
Mhm.
about, I mean, from the craziest thing to the simplest thing. I mean, it's very, it got out of control. It lived out on social media. So you have,
Sure.
just random people in the community hearing things or thinking things and spewing it on Facebook
Yeah.
or whatever have you. And then the next thing you know, that's what happened to them.
Right,
It's like-
exactly.
So you're in a way kind of echoing a little bit what Steve Pappas said the other day on the show.
Mhm.
Do you have any more thoughts or comments about that particular podcast the other day?
Oh, yes.
Please.
About the podcast in general, yes. Well, I mean, it's tough because, there has been articles in specific,
I want you to
the
be
Times
I want
article.
you to be brutally honest,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
sure.
show's called Aired Out, so let it go.
Right. We're going to suss some stuff out. Don't worry.
right.
So, Steve is what, the editor of Times Argus,
Yes.
and there's a lot of talk about racial issue with this case, that for some reason the police didn't try, hard enough to, look for evidence or find out what happened to Ralph because he, is a person of color or because of his economic social status. And that's sort of easy to think right off the cuff when you think like a year ago, nobody really knew about this case. Like, why didn't we know about this case? Must be they didn't try very hard. Why wouldn't they be trying very hard? I can understand where somebody would get there in the first instance, but the more you learn and the more you talk to law enforcement and hear what they've done, it's sort of been a narrative that's been pointed at the law enforcement, through this whole thing. But perhaps if that is an issue, which I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's part of the reason why the case didn't get enough media attention. But I think that if that's being pointed at anyone, it should be the media. We do know that the law enforcement put out press releases really early in the case. What happens to a press release? I mean, the cops don't write the stories and put them out.
Sure.
The media does.
Yeah.
And so for whatever reason, the media didn't pick up these things. They didn't contact law enforcement after the press release was put out.
Yeah.
I think there was a couple before anybody reached out to law enforcement. So, why did the media not pick it up? Is the media biased against people of color? I don't know, but
And throw in the fact that there was a presumably shady crowd that
right.
Well, throw that in as well.
Well, but the
it's
media
not just-
never, shied away from a shady crowd. It's that also we were in the midst of a pandemic breaking out.
Right.
Most of the news was focused around COVID.
Sure.
There was George Floyd. There was other big things
Huge
Happening at the same time.
And so
Yeah.
I don't like giving the media an excuse. And I don't think it is an excuse. And I think that they did drop the ball on Ralph. I don't think they did his case justice. I think the ball was dropped. But I think I would feel that it's safe to say the media is more to blame for that, I believe, than law enforcement.
Yeah. Did the police drop the ball in any degree?
How do we? I mean, possibly. Who knows? Every investigation starts a certain way, and they can only go based on what information they gather. And we know that this information from this case, like you said, comes from
it's
shady
wild,
characters.
and it's
Wild.
Yeah.
Wild,
Mhm.
wild accusations. Just
Sure.
it gets crazy.
Mhm.
So,
And some accusations may be 100% correct, but how do you know? How do you weed
well, I mean,
through
to be
all of
honest,
it?
I mean, the law enforcement has followed up on some of these crazy as much as they can. I mean,
Mhm.
how much can you follow up on some of them?
Right.
I mean, some of them are pretty out there. So they have followed up on many of these leads that seem crazy.
Yeah.
But they go ahead.
Will all of those myths be dispelled at some point in the documentary?
I mean, we're going to
Well-
do our best. Absolutely.
Right.
And if the crime is solved,
So that if there are certain bullshit stories that have been ruled just that, will that be stated as such in the documentary?
Well, the documentary is not finished yet, but I know that it is our plan to get at those scenarios.
Okay.
To get at those scenarios and suss them out. And it's important because it's all relative in the community's cry that nothing was done. It's like, well, this is what we're dealing with.
Sure.
It's going to have to come out that we're dealing with this. Like, this is the evidence the police got. These are the statements the police are getting from people, and this is what they have to work with.
Right.
and not all evidence collected by the police can be revealed, because
Absolutely.
then,
And that's something really important to
and
talk
then
about.
you're jeopardizing the
Mhm.
case.
Very true. And let's also say that the police are, if they're withholding information for the sake
It may
of,
be for a damn good reason.
yeah, for a sake of a real good reason, the investigation is very active.
Mhm.
They're not necessarily going to be constantly in the media saying, just to remind you, our investigation is continuing and we're dealing with this and this and this, and spelling that out and being transparent with it with the public. They have to stay under wrap, and if they are under wrap, a good law enforcement agency is going to be very accustomed to taking some heat from the community of, what are you doing? Why are you being so tight-lipped when there's really a lot of activity going on that they know about, but they just don't want to and shouldn't, frankly, respond to a lot of the allegations that are flying around.
Right. And so
They've got broad shoulders.
I feel like it should be pretty much common knowledge that investigations go that way, that the police don't come out and say, this is what we got, folks.
Yeah,
right.
and we're dealing with that.
Because especially when they have zero suspect. I mean, they literally do not have any formal suspect.
Right.
They have people of interest. They
People
do
of
not
interest.
have a formal suspect. So
I think the criticism was just, and we've already kind of alluded to this, is that the police were just seemingly, allegedly,
Mhm.
a little lax in jumping into this right off the get-go. When our community,
Yeah.
our community was extremely vocal about it on social media. Oh my God, so many days have passed, so many weeks have passed, nothing's happening, blah, blah, blah. What's going on? Where are the police? I think, I think that's one of the arguments.
absolutely. And I think that, admittedly, I think any investigation, and I know the Barrie City Police have also echoed this, is that any investigation, things are missed, and so they can only do their best at the time, and whether they drop the ball on some things, that may be true, but it's not because of lack of care or lack, of any kind of respect for Ralph. And so if we go back to when this was reported to them,
Sure.
this was reported late. They had lost a couple of days of, possible evidentiary value of talking to people in the area, or even going into the room to get evidence. I mean, that is a long time to get rid of evidence, to make sure people are quiet,
No doubt.
to do whatever they need to do. Okay.
Yeah.
Coupled with that, it was a missing persons report. And it was a missing persons report that he stormed off. He was upset. They did have a rocky relationship. There was a lot of storming off. There was a lot of, things going on. And so this wasn't exactly out of character to storm off, but normally would come back.
Sure.
So, it's like missing person. Did he go someplace on his own? Let's try to locate him.
Right.
It wasn't like, oh my God, he's dead, or, something bad has happened. He's just missing. We haven't seen him in a while.
Right. But then the whole conversation of he left without his glasses, he left without his sweatshirt, it's cold,
Yeah.
all of that started coming into play.
Right. Which doesn't necessarily mean that, something bad has happened to him, but he hasn't showed up yet.
Sure.
So the first, initial parts of the investigation, I'm sure, were like, let's, see if we can locate this guy.
Right.
Did they start figuring things out? Yeah, of course. They started figuring out that maybe this guy didn't leave on his own. He can't see without his glasses.
Right.
His medicine is very important to his diagnosis. And he doesn't have his wallet or his ID.
Forgot about those things. The medication, the wallet, the glasses. Yes. And his family was saying almost right away, something is
not
very
right.
wrong, because this is not like Ralph. Even on the worst of days for Ralph, he would have, at the very least, reached out to his family members down in Massachusetts and said, hey, I'm okay. I'm really pissed off. I've left Vermont. I'd rather not tell you where I am.
But
Yes,
I'm okay.
I'm kind of in trouble without my medications and my glasses, my wallet, all that. But I just want you to know that I'm okay. And that's where the real root of concern went in almost immediately.
That coupled with the very bizarre behavior of this person's significant other
Mhm.
and friends, and I use quotation marks
Right.
because
Lightly.
I don't know what kind of friends those are,
Mhm.
but the behavior of all of them was so bizarre and still bizarre to this day that you can't help but be thinking you know something or you did something, because the behavior is so not in line with somebody grieving or missing a person, or
Yeah.
looking for a person. Even you don't look
Mhm.
for your significant other who's missing
Sure.
while you're coupling up with somebody
Sure.
2 days, 2 weeks later.
Sure.
Right.
I said when we first started the podcast today to follow the page, to like, to comment, to share. I find it incredibly interesting that we have so many people watching right now, and we've only had one comment posted.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? I think people are hanging back. They're watching. They're listening.
They're waiting for me to say the wrong
Yeah.
thing.
They're waiting. They're
Yeah.
waiting. Yeah. It's just, isn't that?
How many people do we have watching? Hey.
We've got a lot.
Yeah.
We've got a lot watching right now. But
It-
go ahead.
Well, as you spoke of earlier, the beginning of this was all also at the beginning of COVID and lockdown and
Sure.
everything.
Sure.
And that's where a lot of us need to check ourselves. We were sitting around with a lot of time on our hands, conjuring up these things that could be happening because we needed something going on in our lives. And
Absolutely.
today everybody is hungover from yesterday's festivities
Not me.
and can't comment. I mean,
Right.
come
I'm
on.
glad you brought that back up, because there is something else to be said about the COVID. It really, I mean, I'd have to check the exact dates, but I mean, people weren't going to work. They were
Right.
doing
we were in
they're
lockdown.
doing their news reports from their living room.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, that kind of played into a lot of,
Sure.
the missing information.
Sure.
Like I said before, that's not an excuse. It is
No.
a possible
Yeah.
reason, but definitely, the news was not focused on Ralph enough initially.
Yeah.
But like you said, the country was going through, the world, the whole
Right.
globe was
Right.
going through a lot.
Right.
Mhm.
But again, that's not an excuse.
We're starting to get some comments now, but
There you woke them up.
Well, yeah.
Please, if you're watching today's show, if you have any questions for Rebecca Ranga, please post them up now. We're looking for poignant questions from our community.
So meanwhile, you mentioned, you had me talking about your podcast, your last podcast, and Steve being on. So where I was going with all that is that he's the media. So he had some interesting things to say, and I'm not 100%. 100%. Impressed with how even the media is taking things right now. They're just missing a lot, I feel like. I mean, I know the reporter that has done the last couple articles of this case was, at the press briefing in April.
Reporter from the Times-Argus.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, they were at the press briefing. And so, he's been covering or making mention of this contempt charge from a person who, is in the community, Lee Morgan.
Yes.
There's a contempt
we
charge.
we should tell everyone that if you're just watching now, this is not Lee Morgan, the lady who's in contempt of court.
To be fair, they go by they, them.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
I think we
They, them. Yep.
should
Okay.
stick to that.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
So they, and if I slip, I'm sorry, I may. Um, but, you know, they were at the press briefing.
Yeah.
And they have been, you know, the Times Argus talks a lot about these activists or these people who have this narrative that the police aren't doing enough because he was what he was. You know, he was a person of color, low economic, social status. But that person came out to the press briefing. First was very vocal about, you know, how they felt about what the law enforcement was doing. Had gone to rallies, had, you know, done, I believe, a vigil or something, was involved that way. Lee calls themselves an activist. And so that may be true, but in this case, it feels more like she's been they've been a critic more so than an activist.
Agreed.
Really putting it out there, just went real hard on law enforcement before the press briefing. And, you know, the documentary had been kind of ramping up, had put out some little videos, campaign video, I believe. And it brought the attention of the law enforcement. It brought the attention of the community back up that, hey, Ralph is still missing. It's been a year. And so it was kind of like asking the law enforcement to, hey, let's get it together. What's going on with this case, right? So ask them to tell us what's going on, want the law enforcement to do more. So they come out for this press briefing. And Chief Bombardier and Attorney Thibault come out, stand on the lawn. People come, reporters are there. The Times Argus is there. And Lee Morgan is there. And, I mean, not everybody was wearing a mask. They were wearing a mask. Sunglasses. I don't remember it being too sunny, but in a hat. It felt a little bit like disguising. I don't know. That's what it looked like. I was there and stood off from everyone else and really came at them. And I'm not saying that's wrong to question. And I think a lot of people were thinking that at the time. And so posed a lot of questions to the two, and it was like very accusatory, very disrespectful, I think. And so no answer was good enough, and any answer they gave, they'd accuse law enforcement or the state's attorney of being deflective or whatever have you. But at one point, they basically said that they had sources. They knew for a fact that there was footage of Ralph of that day. And so that was put out there that that they had some source that there was footage of Ralph. And so law enforcement didn't deny or confirm that and told everybody there that if they had that information, the only reason they would give it out to the public is if it would produce some viable, some credible, some good evidence to move the case forward. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't put it out there just to put it out there. They would have to have some reason, like, hey, can anybody identify if that's Ralph, or some reason why they would have to put it out there. But continue to, not confirm that there was an existence of a video. And so it got pretty intense. It was like a back and forth. And so Lee, sat there and basically said, well, I have facts and I have sources. I know there's a video. And at the same time, I mean, one of the reasons they're there on the lawn is to say, you're not doing enough. You're not following up on the leads. You're not doing enough. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, Times Argus was there when when that all was said. And then, you know, I don't know, it was a couple weeks later, maybe, law enforcement was, I believe, in the area doing some other checking for some other case in Burlington, and went to visit Lee at their home to see about said sources, said video, to check up, because everybody wants them to do their job.
Right.
So they go there, knocking on the door, wanting to do their job. And they are met with the most defensive and offensive at the same time. I don't know if that's possible, but I mean, it was like, how dare you come to my home? And the reason I know this is because Lee posted this on their page. I don't know if y'all have seen that.
I have.
And at this point, I mean, I've never met Lee. I think we're even Facebook friends because we kind of roll with some people of the same, circle. But I didn't know somebody could be. I mean, they just didn't want anything to do with
Helping.
And I remember you saying to this, if you have beans, you put them all out in this situation.
Yeah.
And I like that. And I was like, oh, somebody understands. So yeah, I mean, you went and stood on the lawn and said you had information and that the cops weren't doing what they were supposed to do. So, and then when they come to do what you've asked them to do, you clam up and you are appalled that they knocked on your door. She just rude. They were just rude.
You almost kind of have to expect that.
Yeah.
If you're getting out in the public eye and you're claiming that you're running a
you have to
documentary,
wonder if someone else had said it at the press briefing, had said, hey, I have a video, I have sources, I know for a fact that this video exists. I mean, wouldn't Lee expect them to go to that person and ask, who's your source?
I would hope.
What is your source? Where is the video? This is not rocket science.
Yeah, and
And
if
I'm
your fight is
surprised.
to solve this or help the family or get closure, then why are you holding back?
I am surprised at that behavior. I was very shocked. I think all of us were. But at that time, there's been a lot, even the Times Argus has commented a lot about, and your podcast was like, you guys sort of sussing out whether Lee is attached to the documentary, whether that person was a documentarian or involved in the filming. And we have discussed already that the Jean Marie Facebook page group is a large group, and they're part of that.
yes,
And some of those people do, entangle with the documentary in a way of like trying to give information or spreading information or stuff like that. Certainly did help out in capacities. Never, I don't believe, was ever filming anything or anything like that. And so prior to the press briefing, the documentary and Lee Morgan had split ways and was no longer at all involved in the documentary. So let me get back to the press briefing.
yeah.
So we're all there. The media is there. The Times Argus is there. And so then where we were. We were talking about the showing up at our door. She literally, or they literally said, I don't want to talk to you about it. Can we give you a card and you can call us? No. This is out of line. And they had literally accused them of intimidation. That this knocking on the door was intimidating because a 7 Days article had come out that day, and it was assumed by Lee that they had read it and they were there to intimidate. them because of this article. And of course, the detectives were like, we don't know what you're talking about.
And I think I suggested the other day on the podcast that maybe it was because she was just trying to protect their legwork, their investigation, their documentary. And
right, but I mean, it's not their documentary.
Yeah,
it's not. Yeah,
Right, it's Anthony.
So, absolutely. And so protecting that theory, yeah, I wanted to talk about that. That's unfortunately ridiculous. There is absolutely zero possibility that was a stunt to drive, awareness of the case. Absolutely not. There is no chance.
What would you have done? What would you have done if they had knocked on your door?
Oh my gosh. I'm
Can
so
I make
glad.
you a coffee?
I'm so glad you're here. You came and it's snowing even? Like, come inside. Like, thank you for, showing up, because I didn't believe you would, because I had a narrative in my head saying, you weren't doing what you were supposed to do. You're not doing your job, but you're here doing your job. Come in, let me help you figure out about this video.
If they started asking you some more detailed questions, would you have ever answered, well, we'd like that to be revealed in the documentary?
The documentary is secondary to Ralph. Secondary. Primary is Ralph. I mean, we are not, this documentary is not a profit document. Nobody's getting paid.
Thank you.
We're trying to do the right thing and show people what's going on and documenting this case. We aren't getting paychecks. If anything, money's flowing out of our pockets. I think to date we did send a group from the documentary out to Minnesota at one point, and that was costly, and so there was some donations taken for that, but also money out of our pockets for that. So
sure.
Nobody's profiting off of this. This is us caring about what happened to Ralph and not wanting people in our community to get away with murder. So there's that.
Wow. So well said.
Thank you.
So well said. So you would never, no, Anthony, would never put yourself in a position where you're in contempt of court.
Exactly. We would never be in contempt of court. So in the big scheme, when you say you're doing the legwork, you're out there doing, why is it then now about you?
Right.
Why isn't it about Ralph? This is about Lee. It's been about Lee since the press briefing. Lee is making it about Lee. I have information. Where is the information? Where's the source? And honestly, it's unfortunate because the whole community, not everybody understands or knows that they didn't have any information. And instead of saying, you know what, my information isn't what I reported it to be. It's not as solid. It's not as good. It's not as true as I made it seem. Sorry, investigation would go away. They held to their ground with, oh yeah, I have it and you already have it, so I don't have to give it to you. What kind of nonsense is that? That's not helpful, and it's not making it about Ralph at all. That's then it's you're in contempt. You went in front of a judge, and still the judge asks you to give your source, and you say no. And that reason is because Lee knows very well that there is no footage of Ralph. Lee was told by the people the source of any footage that would be even in existence. Lee was told by that source that there's no footage. And talk about footage, there's footage of that. There's
Yeah.
footage of Lee being told there's no footage.
There's no footage.
So at that point, knowing that there was cameras rolling when that information was given to them, why are they standing here in contempt?
Yeah.
And then, y'all on the podcast, have spoken about this with Steve.
Yeah.
And I noticed the Times Argus has mentioned this case, has written about it, about the contempt a couple of times. And it feels like, and I'm sure they don't know that it's a fact that Lee was told there was no footage of Ralph, but they were there at the press briefing. They saw.
They should have pushed.
They didn't really make it clear that this person went out in a public press briefing and told law enforcement there was factual sources. She had facts. She had a source of facts that said there was footage. To me, there's something more than contempt there. That's false information.
Mm-hmm.
She was speaking to the chief of police and the state's attorney. I don't know many people that would do that, like on the lawn with cameras.
Oh, yeah.
It just seemed odd to me. It's odd behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And then the knocking on the door and the shooing them away, but then chasing them with the you saw the video. It was a mess.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely insane.
And then even the actual case of contempt, Ike Ben David did a story and put Lee on the news and gave Lee a chance to voice and to say something. And instead of coming with the truth or coming with the sources, basically talked out of both sides of their mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And literally, I don't know did you see that interview?
I did.
I didn't, but I heard.
You did?
Yes.
I heard about it from Raylene.
So there was a moment where she says, anybody who knows anything,
Yeah.
they need to come forward.
Right. And then
And then Ike says, well, why don't you come forward? You said you had information. Why don't you? Well, that's a very good question, they said. But the reason
No
I
answer.
don't come forward is because I believe that the sources will receive retribution or some kind of a bad rap, and they'll come hard on them. And it's
Yeah.
like,
yeah, it made
Well,
no sense at all.
well, that certainly isn't going to encourage the public to come forward with any information
Sure.
if you're saying that for some reason the police would, punish you for
Yeah.
giving information. I mean,
Right.
what kind of nonsense is that?
But at least he asked her that question. At least he was willing to say, well, why don't you release yours?
I don't know why anybody wouldn't. That's kind of the whole thing here is the it's like,
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
Hey, you want a mic? One right there.
Yeah.
He doesn't.
We got another microphone right there.
Yeah. I am Anthony's mouthpiece. I just hit my teeth on the microphone.
Anthony's here, just off camera.
Yeah, that's absolutely another question. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We always say silence is violence, right? When you actively, as a white person, a white individual,
Step over here, bud, so we can hear you a little bit more.
absolutely. I would just like to talk about.
But he doesn't want a mic.
When we speak about specific scenarios such as activism, when I break down what activism is, it actually means something to me. It means you're anti this, you're anti that, you're anti-racist for months, for over a year, especially when the George Floyd scenario happened and whatnot like that, the Breonna Taylors, all that stuff, the Ahmaud Arbery's. we were preaching silence is violence. And every activist who stepped up, white activist that was, because you can't call me an activist. Don't call, I mean, I get it, but like at the end of the day, I live in my own skin every single day. So I'm actively inheriting everything throughout my lifetime. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know what it's like to be Black because I am. An activist is supposed to support and be there for people of color, especially when they don't have a voice of their own. Specifically in this scenario, you look at a guy like Ralph Jean Marie. None of us really knew him. I'll tell you this right now. Rebecca has never one time put herself before myself within this documentary, within this process of the investigation. She's always looking for, Anthony, is it okay if I speak about this? Before this even started, and you guys can contest to this, I'm not going to speak for Anthony. You know what I mean? And so like automatically she's looking out for me, and she's trying to protect me first. Again, I have a voice, I can speak up for myself, but we've gained that level of trust and honesty with each other to be able to speak for one another if that is the case. But again, we respect one another before we do that. Ralph, as far as we are concerned, is bare minimum missing. And that's like,
Right.
we all probably know
Right.
what's going on here, right?
Right.
He no longer can speak for himself. We need to be his voice. He no longer can hear what's going on behind closed doors. We need to be his ears, right? He can't walk anywhere. We haven't seen him walking down Main Street in Barrie. So we now have to go to these specific places to ask these hard questions. When detectives show up to your place of residence because you are the one pushing the narrative of they are not doing enough, and then they do more than what they need to do. They come out to you again. Last time I checked, it's the Barrie City Police Department,
Right,
not
not
the
the
Burlington,
Burlington.
PD. So they come all the way out to you because you've been running your gums, and then automatically you give them the essentially the finger. So you're telling me that you being loud
And attack them
vocal-
further,
Correct,
she did.
Correct. But you're telling me you being loud, you being vocal, you being this and that about the scenario. And then all of a sudden when it comes to putting the big boy pants on, right? Like your big boy pants on, you're now all of a sudden saying, and quote, you refuse to speak. Now, I feel like I can put this out there because it needs to be put out there. The information that Lee Morgan has, the information that she gathered and received, I gathered and received that same information because Lee and I went to the Halloween together to speak to the people behind the desk, to speak to a guy who, by the way, and I won't mention his name, but to speak to a guy who, by the way, knew Ralph better than any of us in this room. Like saw Ralph every day, watched him walk through these doors, watched him walk through these specific areas. This man literally looked at us when Lee asked. And again, we have this on record because that's all I do. Before I walked in here, I told you guys, do you mind if? Because I'm documenting everything. Thank you again, Rebecca, for expressing we do not put the documentary before the investigation. That's like the number one thing that we've always stated. There will never be something put out there that isn't that isn't just to update. And the only reason why we put out like many little clips and whatnot is because we're doing the media's job, because the media hasn't really stepped up yet to do anything, to do much of anything. They would much prefer, I know I'm all over the place, but bear with me. They would, this is months of frustration. They would much prefer go to Lee Morgan's court case 2 feet down the road from here and sit there and be like, so Lee, what is this about? And watch Lee legitimately just like lick her lips and be all about Lee and her unfitted tux that she has on, tuxedo that she's got on. It's like, it was the Lee Morgan show. Literally the Lee Morgan show. And all Lee cares about from an activist standpoint is actively looking good in front of a camera that will actually give her give them any sort of attention. But again, like I said, we received the same information. She claims there are two people. There's a couple people that she has to protect. She doesn't have to protect me because, to be quite frank, I'm assuming we're not allowed to swear. But
Yes, you can.
Oh, we can? I don't give a fuck about
Well,
it.
hey.
Yeah.
That's all right. I'm sorry.
Oh, she's used to it anyway.
I don't give a hoot about Lee.
There you go.
And the reason why I don't give a hoot about Lee is because when Lee started making this about Lee, when we went to Boston to go film the family for the for the campaign video that we were coming out with, which really started this whole thing.
Yep.
It was Lee's idea. It was absolutely Lee's idea to go out to Boston to film the family. 100% credit to Lee. That's where the work for Lee stopped. I filmed everything. I planned everything. I set up everything. I documented everything. Granted, Lee paid for the hotel. But other than that, the work that was being done, all the work that has been done has been either through me or through the team that Bex and I have built. So to claim that there is footage out there when I distinctively was standing next to her and we were receiving information from the people who would know because they scrolled on their computer and said, the footage that we gave to the police department does not show Ralph, Jean, Marie. For Lee to then take from what they heard there and throw that out to the world as we demand the footage to be released. We demand the FBI to get involved. We demand this or that. And I will say this, guys, to you. I cannot confirm or deny if there is footage. I cannot. But all I can go off from is what I was told by people who would actually know. And they told us that there wasn't. So for Lee to even hold any sort of light to there is footage and it needs to be released, that in itself is a lie. And that is why the Berry City Police Department, if we really want to get technical, when the chief called for the press conference, that's why the Berry City Police Department was like, we continuously get leads that are bullshit. And then we have to follow up. Correct. And we have to follow up on those leads. So then the person who I'm trusting at the time, Lee, when they literally play that exact scenario out, that tells me that it's not the lack of care in the police department. It's not because he's black. You know what I mean? It's not because he has a economic social status that is just not like, you know what I mean? Like he's just poor. You know what I mean? It's not about that. And like, that's micro to what we're dealing with here. What we're really dealing with is the fact that there is a person of color who is missing. And because everything that has happened in the last year and a half, almost 2 years now, because all that happened, we had activists, right? Activists say, this is my shot. This is my opportunity. This is my chance to prove once and for all that I'm not racist, that I'm not. And that's literally, that is the most racist take.
Agreed.
You can possibly have. That is the most racist take you can possibly have is I'm going to hurt people of color. Mind you, we don't, again, Lee and I don't mess with each other anymore. Lee, if you're such an activist, and I hope Lee does listen to this. Lee, if you're such an activist, then why don't you support me? Because it's not about Black Lives Matter. It's not about Black Lives Matter when, like, you know, people die or just turn up missing. It's also about Black Lives Matter because people exist. Literally, because people exist. People eat, sleep, breathe a different color than you. Like, if you can't support me through this process because you, Lee, happen to have all the answers to this whole scenario, then how can you possibly tell me you give two excuse my language, but two flying hoots about a person of color whom you've never met before, whom you have literally no clue about, whom you were told and given information that there is no information to go off from, but instead you would rather destroy the integrity of the investigation by destroying the Berry City Police Department, all due to the fact that you have an ego and, quite frankly, some mental issues that you need to deal with. Sorry, I'm done. Like, I had to get that out there.
Thank you, Anthony.
Yeah.
Yes, there's the slow clap.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He needed that. He needed that. We need that because
Anthony just
True.
like fucking purged, man.
Yes,
Wow.
he did. Yeah.
yeah. So
That was a proper purging.
Yes, it was.
it was proper, and I mean,
but needed. It
was-
needed
well,
that,
it was
that needed to be
needed,
heard.
and
it
it was
really
real.
did, especially
I
right
think
now.
there's a lot
Yeah.
that needs to be
Yeah.
heard and said.
Mm-hmm.
Really.
I mean, when you first reached out, and well, you reached out to Anthony, and
Yeah.
then Anthony was like, yo, you're going to go do this. And we started speaking. It was like, I think I said, yeah, there's a lot to be aired out. It's really a lot. And this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Mm-hmm.
What can you give us an idea when this production might be?
I'm hoping that when we find Ralph, but I mean, obviously we don't know. I mean, I feel like
we've got a few missing cases.
Oh yeah, there's definitely some missing cases.
Raylene, what was that? Was that a podcast that you sent me that
With
link?
Crystal Bailey.
Yes.
Yeah, that is
The missing persons.
Yep, that is literally a podcast
Familiar with that?
about missing people all over the United States. It's not just Vermont based.
We need to get that.
It's a case that they heard about, that they work on. Not the Ralph case, but another case here in Barrie.
Sure.
With Crystal Bailey. Yeah, another missing.
I know there are other. There is at least one podcast that has done 2 episodes on Ralph, long episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I'm not familiar with that one. But yes, there's other missing people, and I care about them too. But this one in particular, is the one that we're facing.
There's a lot of pieces to this
There's
puzzle.
a lot of pieces. There's a lot of very, and no disrespect, but there's a lot of sketchiness.
Yeah.
Sure.
There's a lot of sketchy characters. I call them characters because literally every single person of interest in this case could be a character in a movie or some kind of series.
Yeah, it's almost like you're not trying to put the puzzle together, but take it apart piece by piece until you find
good way to put it. I like that.
the one piece.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know if we're putting it together or taking it apart or, there's little puzzles that are being built that are wrong. You got to take them apart. And some of the puzzle pieces are the ones you need. Some of them aren't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like there's 100,000 analogies we could come up with, but it's all just going to boil down to, wow, there's a lot of information. There's a lot of really sketchy individuals. And by sketchy, I mean they know what happened and they're not saying anything. Why? Because they're culpable. They're that's why we're not hearing anything from people, is because the ones that know are the ones that are to blame. And I don't think it made it very far out of that tight circle as far as like the truth.
I don't think so either.
I think they all of the information all of these stories and these, rumors.
Yeah.
I believe they all start from this small group of people that are either responsible or know what happened as deflection. And the law enforcement has talked about this, and I don't think it's far to get there. I mean, they put out little ideas and then they snowball and then they're deflecting from what really happened, which I don't know what happened. I am, in my person, I am almost completely sure that there are 2 people I believe are either responsible or no. I believe Bridget knows what happened or could be responsible.
Who's Bridget?
Bridget is Ralph's significant other, I'll say. I believe they're on and off for, something like 8 years. They have kids together. It is reported they have 3. But it was also reported that one of them is a questionable Ralph.
Okay.
So we don't know, but he held them out to be his children, all 3 of them. Bridget, I don't know Bridget personally. I have never spoken to Bridget. So normally I wouldn't speak about people I've never met, and don't know firsthand.
Go ahead.
But I have.
Because I know.
No, I mean, I've done my research. I am I don't just hear something and believe it. I actually, do my research, and I have, seen her comments, seen her responses, seen, video clips of her And there is nothing that could convince me that she's either just a very strangely behaved person or she's guilty. I mean, it's one or the other or both. I mean, I'm not going to say that there's one way to react to this happening to somebody but I know that if my husband, and she even has on Facebook alluded to him being her husband, like called him that, so that's her voice, not mine. But if my husband, we had a fight and he walked out without his
went
glasses
missing
and his medicine, and I know he needs that medicine and his glasses to see, and no, leaves without his wallet or ID and doesn't come back that night, I'm going to be calling everybody.
No matter how bad the fight was.
I don't
right
care.
or posting on Facebook.
And even
has anybody seen him, this, that, or the other,
Oh,
instead of posting
absolutely.
pictures with another man the next day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean,
Very.
it's not, we're not being judgmental. That's just common knowledge. You just don't, I mean, I don't
Yeah,
think
it was
that's
out
okay
there.
in anybody's world. Would that be okay? Where
Mhm.
you I don't know what she did to look for him. I know that she at one point reached out to the family, like, I haven't seen him. But I mean, like you said, I don't see the Facebook post saying, has anybody seen Riz?
Mm-mm.
Not at all. There wasn't one. I saw Facebook posts saying, hey, what happened to your man? What happened to Ralph? And she's like, buzz off, mind your business. I mean, that behavior that I just don't understand. And of course, days after her guy she says is just missing, she is with another man posting. It's like Facebook official kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
I am now dating this person. And then not even 2 weeks later, okay, so he went missing the 13th of April, reported on the 15th. And on May 1st, 2020, a man named Thomas Partlow Facebook posts a picture of the two of them. And mind you, this is not the guy that 2 days later she
posted a
had
picture
posted
of.
herself attached to. This is a second man, so really third if you count Ralph. A third man on May 1st, Facebook official, May 1st, 2020. I am now dating, Bridget. So, and here now a year later, I think it was in March, they had a baby. So if you do the math, I mean, it wasn't a couple months, if that.
Right.
Or maybe, who knows? It could have been even
Weeks.
that she, created another person with somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, I take issue with that behavior, and to not have any words of remorse, really. Not, it's more like just F off. Don't ask me those questions. Not,
Yeah.
help me find him.
Right.
It's
Her
just like,
and-
I'm just
her
going to
and
move
Lee
on. People who move
are on
on
the
that
same
quickly,
page.
people who move on that quickly
Yeah.
is because they know for a fact Ralph ain't coming back.
Yep.
So why am I waiting to get another man?
I want to ask you a kind of a tough question, and you don't have to answer it, but do you personally believe that Ralph is somewhere or there's a body?
Absolutely not. Ralph is not anywhere but Ralph is deceased is what I believe. 100%. There's no even tiny percent of anything about me that believes that Ralph is still alive and well, or alive and unwell. I don't think he's alive.
I don't want to give any, attention to any of these rumors, and I've heard a few of them, nowhere near as many as you have, or you, Raylene. But there was, I don't want to say it was a rumor, but there was a lot of discussion on social media about Plainfield.
Yep.
What can we say about that? I don't want to.
I don't know. I think that's
All I
sort
know,
of
it's just what I've heard is that his body's in Plainfield. His body's in Plainfield. What do you know about Plainfield? And
I don't
that's
know a lot about Plainfield in particular, but I know that somewhere out that way is some type of property owned by lover number one, just two. Well, after Ralph,
Yeah.
Um,
right. No, you go ahead.
what is it?
Hand that to her.
I can't. I'm blind, dude. You want me to?
Yeah, I think that's smart. I think that's like,
Yeah, definitely. So we're trying to debunk these rumors, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what we're getting at? Okay. So we would like to debunk that rumor. I think that's probably next on our debunking list, if that's a thing.
Why?
Why? Because every single rumor is the only leads we have.
All right, but
There are no other leads.
What was that rumor? Just that he's somewhere on the
Well,
property
there's
of.
different variations of that rumor.
Okay.
There's a pig farm rumor.
Yeah.
There's a buried in the backyard rumor. There is, something to that effect. But I believe that those things are related to one of her lovers.
Okay.
So,
Mhm.
and this guy is currently incarcerated.
Okay.
And Bridget as well is, I don't know if you guys know this, but she's on house arrest because, and that's another rumor. I mean, there's just so many.
Okay.
The
Presumably, why on house arrest?
She is facing charges of dispensing with death resulting. So basically, another murder, different murder.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Basically, is the way I look at it. And one of the rumors is, or ideas, and one of my, I would say, top beliefs is that Bridget was in some way, connected to his death with possibly a drug overdose or something like that.
Yeah.
So I believe fentanyl was related.
Yeah. I'm getting a
And
comment
so-
here that she was recently in jail last year.
But she's on house arrest, I believe now.
Yeah.
But yes, she's
Been
still
out-
facing these
in and
charges.
out many times.
She's still facing these charges of dispensing with death resulting.
Mhm.
And then Chris Elmer, the presumed lover, I guess, had stabbed somebody.
Yeah, he was just sentenced. Remember, there
Yeah.
was a stabbing up here at the
Yeah, we were
laundromat.
here when the police were screaming by
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah, stabbed somebody, and also it was kind of related, I think, to some. The rumor is it's related to some drug activity,
Mhm.
and not just drug activity, but also relationship kind of things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
so whenever, so then there's that connection. It seems like this guy is like the common denominator in a lot of situations around town. The stabbing had to do with, a girl he's dating and
Mhm.
drugs. And then, Bridget, he was dating before Ralph went missing, behind their back, and then
Mhm.
after, and he went missing. There's drugs involved. We've spoken to people who have told us that this guy is known to have fentanyl laced drugs. And so, you have to wonder, is there a method here? Is there a,
Mhm.
Did they get away with that one? And then this one that she's doing time for now is, or facing charges for, one she didn't get away with, or, I mean, I don't know. But I believe personally that the drug theory is high on my list.
Mhm.
But back to the Plainfield idea, that is definitely something that our team wants to suss out and to look at, to get more involved in. We have sort of been working down. So one of the things the documentary took or gleaned from the press briefing is that, and by the way, I got involved like the day before the press briefing
Mhm.
is when I kind of got involved with all of it and started learning about the case. And so I go out to the press briefing, and one of the things that was gleaned is one of Ralph's friends was there asking questions because they've been very vocal and very, interested in what's been done, had put out flyers, did a lot of legwork. If you want to talk about legwork, there was a couple of his friends that actually did that kind of stuff, put out flyers and things like that. So the question was asked, like, if any quarries have been searched, which ones?
Mm-hmm.
Because that is one of the biggest rumors, is that his body was dumped in a quarry. And so, have y'all heard?
I've heard
rumor?
that.
Okay,
I
so
have.
Heard that one.
Yep.
Also heard that they just put some cameras down there and came up with a motorcycle
We'll get there.
and a bicycle. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
I did see the motorcycle. Yes. So that's one of the rumors. So that's sort of where we started. Well, I wouldn't say started with the rumors. We before I was involved, Anthony had spoken to people in the community, was trying to get at some of these rumors, and sort of got a stockpile of rumors. And it was just like that specific one sort of came up at the press briefing where the question was asked, did you check the quarries? And if so, which ones have been checked top to bottom? And the answer was none. Next question. It's like, none. Next question. Okay. All right. Well, that stuck in my mind. And so went home. I'm thinking. I'm like, what is going on here? Why wouldn't they check the quarries? Of course, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I reached out to Chief, sent him an email. I said, hey, I was at the press briefing and I just want to check in with you and find out why. Why would you not check the quarries? What, is there a reason? And so the reasoning, it comes to be that it's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
They leave equipment down there. There's lines down there. It's deep. It's so deep that, there's not diving
Cold
teams in
and-
Vermont
Mhm.
that can go that deep safely.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why. So
Sure.
we don't have any safe way. They walked the perimeters of them. They looked, as much as they could. They even did drones over, but drones aren't going to see down in the water. So that would be like if they were near the quarry, if there was a body near the quarry, that would have helped. But if it's in the quarry, you got to either get somebody in there or
sure.
you drain it. I don't know. Like
Mm-hmm.
me, I barely know nothing about the quarries, period. So I'm putting my thinking cap on. I don't sleep a lot at night. I get up and I think a lot. So I was up one night just being like on Google and looking up and YouTube and looking up, like, how else do you look in the water? Well, I've heard of like something, I'd seen something on YouTube of people looking for bodies or cars that had gone into bodies of water, and they send out a sonar, like ROV sonar machine to find the cars and then, bring the bodies up. And so I reached out to this group that posts YouTubes. I don't know where they're at, somewhere in the country. And they were like, oh, well, this, our tool doesn't do what it needs. You need to find yourself XYZ, sonar. You need a side scan. I think they called it a marine towfish scanner. You need
Drags behind.
you need this capability. So, okay, great. Thanks. So I started just Googling, companies with that kind of technology or that had something, basically you just put that in the search bar and, see what companies come up.
Mm-hmm.
So I come to one and I basically start corresponding with somebody in their, info at, just email somebody, and
Mm-hmm.
they responded real fast, and they started like
Wow.
a thread, and they're getting me in touch with this person and that person and one gentleman. And I started going back and forth, and ended up having, I think we had a phone call, and well, no, we were going back and forth, and he's saying, yeah, let's see about, I think we have one, that we might be able to help you with. And I noticed, I'm like, oh my God, his address says Waterbury. I'm like, what? So I go back to the company webpage, and it's in Richmond, Vermont. And I'm like, holy crap. I'm like, all right, well, this is good. So we're all psyched, we're
Mhm.
we're talking to this guy, and he's like, yeah, we have we have the capability. Let's do this thing. I've got an email out to my bigwigs, basically the company big guys, and I gotta get it,
Should the police have been
Approved?
doing this?
well, I mean, that's why okay, well, we'll get there.
Okay.
So, well, the police did do it. That's the ending story. Okay. But I had reached out to Chief with already having done this check, to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, it was actually almost simultaneously. I'm like going back and forth with the chief and doing this kind of research. So my second email, I believe, to him was, well, I had asked him if they had tried sonar, if they thought about that, or do they have that capability? And I believe the answer was no. We really haven't. We haven't gone down that road. We haven't looked into that. But thank you for the idea. I'm going to put something out there. We're going to look into that. Okay, I said, great. Keep me posted. But in the meantime, I'm, working with Anthony, and shortly after that, Chief reached out to Anthony to do some work with getting information out to the community. And we can talk about that later.
Mm-hmm.
But so I found these guys, and they're in Vermont, right? And so we get in touch with them.
They're right down the road.
Yeah, and I live in Essex, so it's like real close. And so I say, can we come interview you for the documentary? He says, sure. We set up a time. Well, first thing in the next morning, I get a letter with a letterhead on email. Like, yeah, we can't be involved with this. So there won't be an interview. We're pretty, down, because it was like sort of exciting. We were like,
Mhm.
we're going to interview this guy and get some information about if this sonar can be used. Can it find Ralph if he's in the quarry?
Right.
And so we were real excited to get this information. And then it was just kind of like a wah-wah.
Mhm.
But originally, when I had reached out to this company, my request was, can you get me in touch with somebody in my area or whatever that has this technology that, you manufacture or are involved with somehow? Because who has the tools. They're $260,000 machines.
Sure.
Who has them. Not everybody's buying these things.
Mhm.
Right. So can you, see if one of them's willing to rent it, help us,
Mhm.
donate it,
Mhm.
whatever. And so ultimately they did what I asked, is they got me in touch with somebody. They said, and I said, please just give us the interview. He's like, no, I'm serious. Like, contact this person. They will give you everything you need and more. Like, they do this. They help people. They help find bodies. They may even do it pro bono.
Was this the group out in Michigan?
Minnesota.
Minnesota?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you guys drove out there.
Some of us did. Yeah. So
Wow.
I was like, you know what? I was disappointed. We were all disappointed about this kind of lead, kind of feeling like it came to an end. But it didn't. He basically gave me another lead. And so I, took that and went with it. And I said, I'm going to reach out to this guy. And I reached out to him. And lo and behold, they were very excited to hear from us. And so I had, a couple of conversations with this guy, Tom, out in Minnesota. And I'm like, God, it's so far. Like, how are you going to help us? But he was like, we can help you. It's like, really? But one of their things is, they're not going to get involved in an investigation that's ongoing with, they don't step on the toes of police work and investigation. So it was very clear early on that the help was going to come if law enforcement was involved. I said, no problem. We'll work with that, So basically, we kept the conversation going with this guy. And, Anthony then got, involved. We had three-way call. We're talking about the possibilities of them actually coming. And part of the group, so there's two guys, and one of them is an ex police officer. And so he has years of experience with law enforcement, and we're pretty excited about it. So what we did was decide together, Anthony and I decided that what we're going to do is we're going to put the legwork in. We're going to find out if these guys are for real. We're going to find out what they can do for us. We're going to find out what the technology does. We're going to document it. We're going to put it in a nice little care package and we're going to deliver it to Chief
Bombardier.
and Attorney Tebow. Like, that is our plan. So, we
Are you still
basically
gift?
stuck to the plan.
Are you still gift wrapped?
Are you listening?
Oh,
Lee?
we yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's how
because
that goes.
that is how that goes. That is how that goes. Thank you for saying that, because you know, we're not looking for credit by any means here. I'm telling this story because it's interesting, and because I think that it goes to the fact that when you say that police are doing nothing, that means that, you know, they're not doing anything. But just because there's no information, new information or new evidence, doesn't mean they're doing nothing. And so we also want to bring attention to the fact that this, and Anthony is very, and you can correct me, Anthony, if I'm wrong, but Anthony is big on this being what, I don't want to say police reform, but something like that. Like, what does it mean when we bring the community a little closer to law enforcement? So Anthony and I really feel as if the documentary is, I mean, we're making a documentary, yes, but we're also like the community, because we have a group of people supporting us and working with us that are of the community and for the community. They're activists, they're friends of Ralph, they're just people who are concerned or interested. I mean, there's a whole kind of variety of different people involved behind the scenes. And so bringing the community in this case is like so important, because the gap between law enforcement and the community in this case has been so vast.
Yes.
And a lot of it has to do with, and we've spoke about this, that there's some sketchy kind of characters, and those sketchy characters do not want anything to do with law enforcement. They've had things to do with law enforcement that went very negative for them. And then we have, unfortunately, you know, people who claim they're activists, like Lee, going out and saying, if you speak, you're going to get, you know, harassed by the cops.
Right.
Or the sources are going to be harassed. I mean, that works against us. That works against the cops, if you ask me. So we got to bring the community in. They have to feel some level of trust.
Which is a big job here. I feel it's a real two-sided coin, because you have the sketchies and then you have the not sketchies. And the not sketchies are constantly not understanding why we're not dealing with the sketchy, and vice versa. Like, it's real. It seems more intense here than other places sometimes. And I don't know if it's because it's a small community and we tend to be really close. Like, usually we rally together, you know, when things happen. Maddie Bain, you know, for instance, just like that's something that all of a sudden we all stand together. But that's why I said I think we need to check ourselves a little bit.
There's
because
a huge hush factor going on.
And it's not even that. We can totally get into.
Well, and saying that you should hush because you might get, you know, harassment is definitely not going to help.
Right. Exactly. That, and it just, I think that a lot of times this community, especially, because so much happens here. The court is here. The probation and parole is here. A lot of things are here. There's a lot of things that this community deals with on a daily basis. And unfortunately, it drives a little bit of a wedge, because there are a lot of people that are just plain and simple, straight up sick and tired of dealing with it.
Well,
And so,
and they have this bad image of police work,
right,
for good reasons,
because they
too.
think it's not being taken care of.
Right. And on a whole, we are in this this day and age where we're realizing there is a lot of problems with a lot of police work.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of corruption. But that doesn't mean you can point your finger at every case and every instance in every
Right.
police department and every police
Yeah.
officer and say corrupt. You know, you can't do
Right.
that.
Let me see if I can
Right.
hear
How-
Anthony. Yeah, we got you.
Okay.
I think we got you. Yeah, go ahead, bud.
Yeah. And it's gonna kind of be weird because I can't see you right now. But I want to kind of get touch base a little on, and again, thank you guys so much for this. You've really, again, as a person of color, you've allowed me to feel safe, and when I feel safe, I know more so what I'm getting myself into. And it's not always like that, obviously, when you're just walking down the street or you're just walking into a restaurant or you're just going to the bathroom somewhere. You know what I mean? It's just not like that. But I want to touch base a little bit on what you had just said about usually community gets around like situations like this, right? And I think that's where we have to realize just because we're not stating Ralph's disappearance is about race or the lack of police care is because he was black, because we're not stating that, that doesn't mean that there aren't other racial issues within community. I'm a
Exactly.
huge believer that when we talk about community and we talk about Ralph G. Marie, we got to also understand we've created a community for Ralph G. Marie. It's
Yeah.
not like there's a community here that really gives two shits about him. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, yes, he was around people who, and I mean, this goes beyond color, but he was around people who clearly actively participate in stuff that none of us in this room would, right? And we wouldn't condone it, we wouldn't agree with it, we wouldn't accept it in our lives. However, there is a huge point that I think should be made about the fact that due to the fact that he is a person of color,
Yeah.
he was still very invisible to this community for many different reasons, and being
point.
a person of color is one of them.
Right.
I think learning, and again, this isn't like a personal, like, why would you say that, right? Like this is stuff that, like, as you really start looking deeper into the entire scenario, you realize where race does play factors and where race doesn't. I'm a firm believer that, and actually this is funny because I was talking to Bex about this. Whenever I would do anything with the police department, or whenever we do stuff with the police department, it's became just recent that I felt comfortable walking through those doors. And it has nothing to do with how they treated me. It has everything to do with the life that I grew up in, the people that I couldn't trust, the people that I was supposed to fear, the people that I was taught to fear. There's a certain level of, as a black man, there's a certain level of expectation of me, and that expectation isn't a positive one. You know what I mean? I'm supposed to be a drug dealer. You know what I mean? I'm supposed to be a thief. I'm supposed to be an aggressive human being. I'm supposed to be uneducated. I'm supposed to talk like I'm from the city and not like a person who was adopted at the age of 3 and grew up in the state of Vermont, right? Like I'm supposed to talk like I'm scared and I'm hiding something. So there's so many, and I mean, obviously we could talk about this. This could be a whole nother podcast, right? But like,
Absolutely.
I think this is something that we have to take into consideration when moving forward when it comes to Ralph Jean Marie's case, because it's not, I don't believe everyone is racist. You know what I mean? I don't have that, like, this idea that everyone is racist. But the fact that I grew up in the state of Vermont, I can distinctively remember when my prime example, going to Disney World, age of 8, 9 years old, with my white family. We went to a Waffle House. We stopped at a Waffle House, I think somewhere in like Georgia or whatever the case may be. And my parents went from being the majority to the minority, right? And I went from being the majority, you know what I mean, to
Oh, yeah.
them being the minority.
Oh yeah.
But the thing about that was, and this is where color plays a huge color and atmosphere, environment plays a huge role in what we're dealing with, is the fact that as a person of color, I still felt unsafe around other people of color because of what I grew up in, and I was never taught. You know what I mean? I was never taught to actively see color because my parents were literally telling me they don't see color, and that in itself is racist. Like, there's no other way to put it. And I'm
It
not
makes you
sitting here trying to
invisible.
say belittle them as individuals, right? They did what they could. However, when you're actively telling your child you don't see color, you treat them equally. You treat them just as if you would have treated your white children.
Sure.
It's like, that's wrong. That's very wrong to say. That's very, and that's something that should be corrected.
Well, we see with our eyes, we see with our heart.
Correct. But we also see with our our overall
Notion.
exactly, like our environment tells us, you know what I mean? So like if you tell me you don't see color, there's 20 people out here that are going to show me that they do see my color.
You
and it's
have
not
to
gonna
acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? And there's not, and it's not going to be a positive thing either. You know, it might be a conversation like, where'd you come from? It's like, actually, or where'd you grow up? It's like, no, I grew up, I'm your neighbor. Like, I grew up here.
Yeah.
So there's a certain level of that is extremely important to understand about Ralph Jean Marie's scenario, right? And like when Bex and I talk about like personal connections that we have with Ralph due to maybe how we've grown up or who we've been around or just like scenarios that we've been through in life, I think it's important for everybody to start diving into the idea that you are Ralph.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You are Ralph.
Right.
There is something about you that is connected to Ralph as well.
Yeah.
And that alone, if it's something as simple as you both wore shoes, great. Like, but find that connection.
Yeah.
Because I think that overall connection is going to allow you to do, again, what people like Bex and I are doing, which again, and I'll say it until I'm blue in the face, is not something we're even attempting to profit off from.
Yeah.
The police department wanted to pay us for the work that we've done, and we declined it.
Yeah.
Because like that's not, and I mean we declined it, but we also said Ralph has children. You know what I mean? Like, so like let's find a way to make
Get
this
that to him.
profitable for them in the long run, and also
Absolutely.
you know what I mean? And like for us, when we eventually put the documentary out, again, Bex and I have spoken about that. Like we're not going to just throw this up on YouTube. We want to put this in a position to be able to raise money, again, not for us, but for the children of Ralph Jean Maurice, his family. Like, I know he has a son who just entered high school. I mean, he's going to be a sophomore next year, but he just entered high school.
Yeah.
None of us, I mean, some of us probably, I don't know. I don't want to like speak without ignorantly, but like, I don't know what that's like to enter high school without a father. You know what I mean? I don't know what that's like. I do know my dad wasn't always there like that. And it wasn't because he wasn't in the house, but he was a farmer. Like, you know what I mean? Like long hours. He couldn't always go to the basketball games or go to the baseball games, stuff like that.
Sure.
But nonetheless, I was able to count on a person consistently being there at night. You know what I mean? Like I was able to count on, I knew where he was.
Yeah.
The idea that Ralph's oldest sons do not know where he is, like that hurts me. You know what I mean? That really hurts me. And I think
It should hurt everybody.
correct. And it goes at this point, it goes way beyond death. It's hard to mourn somebody
Yeah.
it's hard to mourn somebody that you don't know the status of.
Yeah.
You can only assume it, you know?
Of course. And you and Bex both do not live right here in Barrie. And you both did not know Ralph personally. You weren't friends with him before all this happened, which is,
Thank you, Anthony. I just want to say thank you.
again,
thanks for jumping
noteworthy.
in.
Yeah. Anthony's amazing.
I mean, we were talking about, and I love that he came in right then because we were talking about something. I don't know if you remember before Anthony started talking. We were talking about what it was like to bring the community into the law enforcement and how being Anthony and everything he's experienced and lived as a person of color, really what that it has to do with trust. So the amount of trust he has to build up
Mhm.
to collaborate with law enforcement is a different level than Lee Morgan. Okay?
Sure.
Lee Morgan has white skin,
Yeah.
has lived a different life.
So do you.
Oh yes, that's
Yeah.
apparent.
And she's just
Yeah.
shouting louder. is the
Well, the
problem.
thing is that an activist, and this is, call yourself an activist, but part of the problem here is the community doesn't trust law enforcement. Law
Mhm.
enforcement doesn't have any reason to trust the community that's involved in the case because they are very sketchy people. But yet they still reach out and want to engage them
Mhm.
in the process of finding out what happened. But then you have activist white Lee, who has zero or has exhibited zero trust for the Barrie Police Department, hasn't even given them a tiny little piece of trust in this process, comes out waving the finger, pointing the finger. All of that time and energy focused at, finger waving and pointing and accusatory language could have been better spent developing a trust mechanism
Yeah.
for
Mhm.
her, them and law enforcement, so that, because nobody's finding Ralph or putting justice to what happened to Ralph without what?
Yeah.
The police department.
What's
We're
your-
going to need them.
Anthony, what's your hashtag on that? It's something like it's all about Ralph or
Yeah.
Oh, it's not my hashtag, but it's Justice for Ralph.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I just find it odd that the activist doesn't want to work on the trust mechanism, yet somebody who is at a deficit for trust
Sure.
with the law enforcement just for existing,
Yeah.
has bridged. I mean, this guy's built a bridge by himself
Mhm.
Bex, I wanna
between the
add
community and law enforcement.
Yeah.
Mhm. And I want to add to that too, Bex, and that's really important. And I need everybody to understand. To know Bex is to know that she is going to challenge your every thought process, not due to the fact that she wants to just create chaos, but due to the fact that she needs and wants you to know that she cares enough to call you out on the BS, right? So there's so many times where
I'm glad you understand that.
she's
Anthony.
done that to me, right? And it's like, and I mean, like literally a couple days ago, and it sucks hearing it, really sucks hearing it. But I think that is the integrity of the entire documentary process, which is we hold individuals accountable. Bex, when she's interviewing law enforcement, it's like we're not sitting here trying to buddy with them. That's not like the relationship that we've built with the chief, with the detectives, with whoever is involved in this case. It's always been it's come from a very authentic and real place. Prime example. Before Bex was really even involved, at the press conference, I was calling it performative. Like I didn't believe in the press conference. I really believe that the chief and the detectives were just trying to do something performative and something heroic for the day he disappeared. That's literally what I thought it was. I mean, it was held at the Hollow Inn. Like I just thought the whole thing was like odd. And the press conference was literally to announce at that point that there was no new information. Like it was very, very dull. You know what I mean? And I was a little confused, little frustrated, and not really necessarily at the police department, but more so at the fact that, okay, this is a year later and there's nothing, you know what I mean? Like there's absolutely nothing. And that's what kind of, got me upset. And so, one of the, media outlets, I forget which one it was, whether it was Channel 5 or Channel 3, but I had specifically told them, like, I thought it was very performative. Now, I want to fast forward to a month later. A month later, the chief is literally reaching out to me. And the first conversation we had, And this is where he really gained my respect. The first conversation he had was like, now I don't know how all this works as far as like the video and how you like put out stuff to the media and whatnot. And here I was thinking like, he's going to tell me he's going to try to get me to shut down, right? Like he's going to try to get me to stop putting pressure on them. He actually welcomed the pressure. He welcomed the fact that we were putting Ralph Jean-Marie in the spotlight, and he wanted us to keep him there, to the point where he said, and quote, I know you guys are going to be honest with me, so correct me if I'm wrong. And it's been like that this entire time. Like we've had a very, 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 and I don't know, Bex, maybe you can talk on this more, but like we've had a very parallel relationship. Like it's been very focused on what can we do next? What can we do right now? What do we have? What don't we have? Like,
Are you afraid 6 months from now, 1 year from now, that you guys aren't going to have anything more to go on?
absolutely not. I'm not. I don't know about you, Bex.
To go on? You mean rumor or information?
Information, real
I wouldn't say worried.
substantial
No.
information that can be put in the documentary.
No. No,
We've gone a
but
year.
the
you just said.
documentary
We've
is
gone a year without
right.
really anything
Mhm.
coming out.
Yeah.
Really. Could
Yeah.
there be another year that goes by?
nothing's coming out, but things are happening. JD, things are happening.
Good.
Correct.
They're not have we come up with any evidence? No, but as important as finding something, finding, his hat he was wearing, or finding his body, or as important as that is, finding out where he's not,
He was really wearing a hat.
Right.
You don't even
Right.
know.
finding
That's
out where
the
he
hard
is
thing.
is great, but finding out where he isn't is closer to finding out where he is.
Mhm.
Sure.
So, you want to talk about unraveling or debunking.
Yeah.
So that's what the documentary is doing, parallel to the investigation of the police department. I mean, they're doing the same thing. We're doing it in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, if we found something, we would have no problem making sure that it was checked up on somehow. And that's how we got to the conversation of how we got to Minnesota.
Yeah.
And the debunking. That was the first thing that we took on, is debunking the quarry situation, that he's been dumped in the quarry. And so we talked about how I reached out to the chief, had the conversation. In the meantime, kind of doing the research, we wrapped up the little gift we talked about.
Yeah.
Anthony and a small group got in the car, drove how many of our hours it is, over 20, 24, I don't know how many hours it
was
is,
long.
but drove to Duluth, Minnesota
Who
with
did
his
you drive
equipment.
with?
So we actually, so it was myself, a guy by the name of Dylan,
Yeah.
a lady by the name of
friend
Sierra.
of Anthony, friend of Ralph.
Yep,
Dylan
correct.
is
Like,
a
so
friend
like,
of
exactly, excuse me, I'm sorry, Bex, you're right. Like, so Dylan is a friend and an individual who actually knows Ralph Jean-Marie.
Okay.
So we all went out there, and it was, like I said, like Bex stated, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but like it was very to the point. We had a plan, and we knew we needed to gift wrap it in a way
Yeah.
that didn't beat around the bush for the police department, or the
Sure.
chief especially, and the state's attorney.
And they've been
Right,
embracing
and at the
of this?
time, we were building a trust with them. Building, meaning it hadn't, the structure had not been,
Right.
confirmed. It was a
Sure.
building of trust
Sure.
with them. So it was like, we didn't tell them what we were doing. I obviously had the conversation with Chief about sonar, but he didn't know that we were doing this kind of research on our own. And again, when dealing with the chief, when asking questions, we really tried to figure out what would be the best way to gift wrap this for them where they can't say no.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
And so we dotted our I's, crossed our T's. Basically, like I said, gift wrapped it so that we knew when we presented it, they were going to open it and go for it.
Yeah.
And so, of course, it was our hope. We didn't really know how it was going to pan out.
Yeah.
But Anthony and a couple of people went out. And so these guys had offered, like, if you come out here, we'll show you the equipment. Okay.
Yeah.
How it works.
It's really
what it
cool
does.
equipment, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
so that alone is just, for documentary purposes, it
Yeah.
was like a gold nugget.
Mhm.
It's like,
Mhm.
we're going to learn some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the rest of the,
Anthony, your footage
gonna
of
learn
your,
it.
your footage of that, would you be able to drop that
Absolutely.
in the comments right now on this
Absolutely.
live stream,
Yep, absolutely.
so folks can
yeah.
see that?
And so we actually had Anthony on the way back from Minnesota after filming I call it the exploration, where they explored they took him out on Lake Superior,
Yeah.
dumped the ROV. It's like a little mini submarine with, cameras and sonars, and showed them how it worked, all that. And then the next day, Anthony had set up a hotel room to do like an interview with Tom Crossman of Crossman Consulting.
Yeah.
And so I, back here in Vermont,
There it
had
is.
somebody,
It just landed in the comments here, so
So-
if folks want to see it.
they were filming me on this side and Tom on Minnesota side, and we did like a virtual interview
Yeah.
with Tom. And so I interviewed him, asking him about the ROV and how he could help us, and specifically in Ralph's case, if he's in the quarry, can he help us find him, this kind of thing. And so we got to the notion that these people could help us,
Yeah.
that they can do what needs to be done.
Yes.
And so it was a wrap. It's like, okay, we got what we wanted. We ended up really, bonding with these guys, having a great rapport with them, Anthony especially. And so we, on the way back to Vermont, this guy edits this unbelievable video. I don't know which one which one did you send? Is it the one that you made from
the original one that we had to wait on?
Okay, the one that we presented.
Yeah, the one that
Okay.
like you were.
So
yeah.
this is what we presented to the chief and the state's attorney.
And it's on right now.
and
It's
so-
sitting here right on the
Yeah.
comments.
And so we came back and said, hey, and to talk about, transparency and willingness to work with the community.
Mm.
There's not a problem on the police. I mean, who are me and Anthony to them, but we call and say, this is what we just want to talk to you about something, and didn't even give them an idea of what it was. Instead, we want the police chief and the state's attorney there. And guess who showed up? The police chief and the state's attorney were
Absolutely.
there in the room waiting for us. We come in, we say, okay, this is, what we have for you. And he's like, oh, is this about what you, emailed me? Yep. We went a little further with it. And this is what, we gleaned from what you've said, is that there's a danger. There's a reason why you can't go in the quarries. And we want to help you find a way around that.
Yeah.
So here is people that will do it without cost of time. And, their expenses need to be paid, but they're not going to charge you for their time
Sure.
or their expertise or their, the use of their 200 and actually it's like, I think combined like, $750,000 worth of equipment or something. They're not going to charge you for that or their time. They're a week away from their families, right?
Yeah,
A week. They were here almost a week, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 days. And so here they are. They're willing to do it for this. They this is what they do, and they have experience doing it, and they can go to the depths they need to, X, Y, and Z. Here you go, and put the video on. And they watched it, and there was no hesitation when it finished. It was basically, let me think about, where we can look and where, what's his number.
Wow.
So if you want a police response to community, there it is. We put it out there. They took the chance. I mean, they were taking a risk on the fact that we, had found some legit people. I mean, I'm sure before, anything, I'm sure they did their homework and they did talk to them and they probably looked into them, I'm sure. But they trusted that we were there for the right reasons and that there was no other reason for us to give them this information other than it was a great idea. So it was a few weeks later that Tom and Dave from Minnesota was here with their equipment. And you know, they did a search as best they can as far as, I mean, the quarries are vast
Yeah.
Mhm.
and not a lot of access to them where,
Mhm.
you know, people could, you know, dump evidence or
Sure.
a body. But they did some searches and didn't find anything.
And there are so
but-
many of them.
Yeah.
But
There's a lot of
but
quarries.
if there were some, and the chief has been vocal about this, if there was some, you know, some type of credible, you know, statement made by somebody, or you know, somebody comes forward, if there's any kind of tip, you know, having more of a precise location.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
I know for a fact those guys would be out here in a minute.
And we've got tools in the toolbox. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think not finding anything is a positive. You know what I mean? Like
Well,
I feel like when you boil down
It's still
kinda like
success.
these rumors and
Yeah.
like what
Right.
has been put out there,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think right now we're in the exit out phase, which is a great thing. You know what I mean? Like you got to start somewhere and then
Checking
you
the
gotta-
boxes is
You
what
got
we
to
call
take it
it.
somewhere. So like we're doing a good job of that. I think like more so like I'm proud of the fact that again we're doing it the right way. You know what I mean? Like this isn't about hey like put us out there in the spotlight and like give us attention.
Right.
Like it's literally it's always catered to what's the best thing for Ralph, and right now the
Mhm.
best thing for Ralph is forward movement.
Mhm.
I do truly believe, like again, and like I'm gonna say this to like any activist that could be potentially listening. When a person of color is working with, and when I say working, collaborating with law enforcement, and you know that person of color, that's a struggle for them to do that for so many different reasons. You should not, as an activist, do anything publicly to try to take that away from them personally, due to the fact that we are further now because of documentation of the Ralph Jean Marie documentary. That's not the name, but we haven't figured that part out yet. But like we're so much further in this investigation as far as forward movement goes, due to the fact that we're doing it the right way. We're not pointing the finger. We're just suggesting, hey, what about this?
Sure.
And when we suggest, that's way better than telling,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
like it's way better than telling. And I think if we just start changing the approach towards communication
Sure.
and like and stop trying to make everything about a racial justice movement or about the next Instagram follower, I think we will find ways to, again, bring community and law enforcement, family, community and law enforcement somewhere closer to the middle.
Yeah.
And not be so far spread out. And I truly do believe as long as we can do that, like if we had the same energy to find the truth as the suspects have of hiding the truth, right? If we have that same energy, like there's no doubt in my mind in 6 months we're going to be in a better position.
Yeah. Wow.
And the debunking is going to help.
Mhm.
And so maybe we don't know for sure that he's not in the quarry, but we have a lot more idea than we did a year
Mhm.
ago.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so we're checking boxes and we're debunking rumors. And so that was one of them that we focused on originally and first and foremost.
What's just to kind of wrap up today, and my God, I hope you guys come back.
Mhm.
I think we're going to
Absolutely.
have to because
Yeah.
there's a lot.
Yeah, we haven't. Yeah, we really have not.
We haven't
Bexley's done a
scratched.
great job. Let's just say that.
Please come back
Yeah.
here. But just to kind of wrap things up today,
Mhm.
what's next for you guys with this documentary? What's next within the hour? Reading through the comments here, presumably, but what's the rest of today look like for you? What's the rest of this week look like for you? What do you guys? What's the goal here? What over the next 2 to 3 weeks? What's next?
So I think the next, did you want to speak or you want?
No. I think you can take it, and then I'll just pick up if I feel
Sure.
like.
So I think that the next rumor to be debunked is going to be plotted out and attempted, and definitely going to be working on that in the near future. But also, kind of like leading up to that, there's what we try to do is do things that spark the community. And when I say community, the community that we want to talk to is basically this group, this circle of that was around Ralph
Mhm.
at the time that he disappeared. We're looking to get information. We want them to start talking to us or to police or whoever, and trying to create a place where they can maybe work on that trust thing,
Sure.
and try to get them a little closer to the case as far as actually helping and feeling safe in doing so. But also on the documentary side, sort of putting those rumors out in a way that could maybe get the people involved to say, hey, it didn't happen that way.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you guys have seen, but we've started some little clips having to do with the rumors and sort of acting them out in ways that, like I said, will cause people to understand that there may be a little truth to each one of them,
Yeah.
and maybe we can put a story together that's the truth
Mhm.
out of each one of them. And so far I believe that is working for us to an extent. We've had some response, and I think it was enough for us to understand that it's definitely a great path to go down for the documentary and for the case. And like we've spoken, the case is secondary to Ralph, but we still do have a documentary to make, and we do try our best to, preserve the integrity of both, and to try to keep them separate to some extent. But it's it's hard.
Yeah, that's hard. That's a
That's-
fine
It's hard.
line.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
separate in the respect that
Mhm.
you have to go somewhere with a documentary, and it's really easy to get caught up in just like becoming investigators and
Right.
being like, we gotta find
Sure.
Ralph.
Mhm.
And so we're trying to marry the two. It's like, what can we do in the documentary that would bring attention to Ralph, the case, but maybe elicit some voices
Yeah.
to the equation here and get people involved in telling us what they know.
Yeah.
And so when they can visually see, oh yeah, I heard that rumor, but that couldn't have been true, because what I know is,
Mhm.
like, somebody knows something. I think a lot of people know a lot of things.
Yeah.
But
Right.
like I said in the beginning, it is my personal belief, and it may not be Anthony's, that at least between 2 and 5 people,
2 to 5.
I would say 2 to 5 people.
I think that's
Definitely.
pretty damn close.
It could be more than that, but between 2 and 5 people know exactly what happened to him. And they're shut up. And it could be me personally, I don't know if I should say this, but I believe it's the 2 that are not even in this community right now. They're locked up and shut away. And I don't know if that's helpful for them speaking up, but I don't think they're going to, because I think they're culpable. They've done something that's criminal. They've either murdered or hid the body, or had something to do with him overdosing and then hid the body, something to that effect. And there was people that helped or know what happened. And unfortunately, and one of the things I did actually want to bring up is, when I say they don't trust law enforcement and they don't want to come out to tell what they know, is because a lot of these people have other things unrelated to Ralph that they worry about bringing attention to themselves, because they're drug dealers. And if the cops are coming around to talk to me or talk to people I know, that there's a good chance that I'm going to get hemmed up
Yeah.
in something I don't want to get hemmed up in,
Exactly.
because I have things that are going on that are going to cause me to be charged.
Sure.
Like, stay away from me. So I'm not going to, they don't care about Ralph like that. They don't care about him like that.
Agree.
And I don't think his circle did care about him enough to even be called friends at this point.
Oh,
I mean, with the exception, there are definitely. I mean, I would not say that about Dylan, but there are a couple that have, stepped up in some capacity, but most of them, no.
Anything else for either Anthony or Raylene to conclude on today? Have we said it?
I think we have said it. I think Bex is Bex, and that's why Bex is Bex, because Bex is Bex.
Bex is badass.
Absolutely.
Thank you both
Yeah,
Thank you.
for having
Definitely.
us.
so much
Thank you very much.
for coming in here and doing this with us today.
Absolutely.
I
We
know
appreciate it.
it's not the easiest of subjects to talk about, and I think it's very easy for folks to be very hesitant with either information or their opinion or what
Mhm.
have you.
Mhm.
But you guys have eloquently said it well today.
Thank you.
I would like to quickly add to the as Bex was saying, we definitely try to keep the integrity of the documentary and the integrity of, although two differences, the integrity of the investigation from the police department standpoint. We try to keep them separate, but we try to protect them both at the same time.
Sure.
The chief of police is very well aware we were coming in today to do this, and Bex reached out, and he again, he was all for it. You know what I mean? And this is something that we're not asking.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
We're
we
not
didn't
asking
call.
for
Yeah, we
permission.
didn't ask for permission, but the respect and trust that we've built,
Absolutely.
I felt required it. And
Absolutely.
And I believe that they know that of us as well,
Yep, sure.
because
Yep, sure
they've
they
been on the show too. They know
We're always
where
talking, yeah.
we stand, and
We're always
Absolutely.
talking
maybe
about.
next time we drag one of them with us.
Wow.
Yeah, I might get the chief to come in with a cigar.
I
We're
would
gonna have
love to sit
cigars.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd
State's
love to sit
attorney
down
was
with Chief.
here not
Yeah,
long
we
ago,
we
and
had Rory
and,
Tebow here not too long ago. So
Yeah.
Bombadier's he's not a big camera guy. He's,
No,
you know,
I don't know. I mean, I've got him in front of a camera
Have
a couple
you?
times. I think he's great.
really?
Yeah. Like
Oh.
I barely had to. Anthony can tell you.
I think
I barely had to ask questions.
I'll reach out to him again. But
great.
I think you guys have done fantastic work so
Remarkable.
far,
Thank you.
yes,
thank you.
and I just hope you continue. I
Mhm.
hope you stay in touch. Facebook pages.
Hey,
Where do people
You
go?
ever hear these stories?
So,
Get
so,
with us.
right.
so
Right.
we're currently in the process of like working on
Yeah.
kind of how we always say, like, we're never putting the documentary before the investigation.
Sure.
We're in the process of figuring out where to have people funnel to, whether it's a website or whether it's a Facebook page or whether it's
Right. We don't
all
have
of
any
them.
of that now.
We are
Yep.
we are working on that, so we
Right.
will definitely get that information to you. And I do truly believe if but when we come back on, we'll definitely have that stuff sorted out.
How do
And
we
in,
say
in
you're,
the meantime, somebody could comment here.
Yeah,
we,
of
and we
course.
could certainly
we got a lot of comments here.
get them the information.
How do we say your last name?
Anthony Marquez. I go by Marquez.
I was
yes.
going to say Marquis.
See, I at first thought it was Mark's. Like,
Marquez.
Yeah.
I don't.
Marquez.
So can people get on your personal Facebook page
yep.
and see some of this video
Yeah,
stuff?
absolutely. So like I
Or YouTube.
tend to put a lot of the stuff on YouTube. That's
Talk
like
to me.
where
Where do we go? Where
so
do we
you can
find
just go
it?
to Anthony Marquez on YouTube and like they'll see everything.
Spell it. M.
MARQUES.
Okay. Anything to add to that? Your
No,
page or
I
anything?
No, I mean, I think Anthony's.
All right. Anthony's
I
the
don't
hub.
think anybody. Yeah, I'm not real public page. Anthony being who he is and what he does, would be a better place.
Your daughter has been amazing. I mean, come on.
Yes.
Oh,
How,
absolutely.
how many kids that
Very
age
good girl.
have been this patient?
Yeah. I mean, nobody out there even
on.
probably knows that my 8-year-old daughter has been here the whole time.
The
just
whole
being a
time.
quiet little.
She actually helps
Mouse.
us with the investigation too.
She does, and she is
Jeez.
sure that she is going to get the $5,000 reward someday by finding Ralph.
Wow.
And
Aw.
yeah, she's supportive. I
She's
mean,
so cute. God.
to begin a funny story. I mean, to start out, I mean, she's used to it now, but a lot of the talk about, murder or missing
Yeah.
person, it got to school one day,
Sure.
and counselor had to call mom and say, "What the heck
Right.
is going
What's
on
going
at home?
Mhm.
Your kid is talking about murder stuff."
Yeah.
And she says there's a lot of murder talk at home.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
oh Lord.
Uh-huh.
boy.
So we had to suss that out with the counselor in the school.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, we hopefully we won't see that again because she's now used to it and she's in on a lot because she's my sidekick. But
Well,
thank you again for having us.
yes,
Both of you.
Thank you
absolutely.
both very
And
much.
and listen, we say this and we mean it. If you like the podcast, tell your friends, follow the page.
I will now.
Yeah, like and share and comment. I mean, this just reinforces that we're onto something. We love giving out information and entertainment and sharing stories of the people that make up our community here in Central Vermont. So for all of the folks that have been watching or listening, if it's on the stream, we're on a lot of different streams. But you post your comments. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a like, and share your thoughts, your ideas, your feelings, your opinions, whatever they may be. And hashtag justice for Ralph. We're talking about Ralph Jean Marie. Can't wait for you guys to come back already. And
Absolutely.
thank you ever so much for your time. Thank you, Raylene, for everything.
Thank you.
Yes, and thanks to our sponsors, The Uncommon Market, Barslow Construction, Granite City, MMA, Emsley's Florists and Gifts, K&W Tire, Gauthier's Quality Grounds and Maintenance, Fontaine Forestry and Millwork, Wright Electric, Salvador and Babbitt, Donnybrook Fight Promotions, Central Vermont Chamber of Commerce, Vermont Custom Woodworking, Aeromed Essentials, and RetirementVT.com. Special guest in the studio tomorrow, not only Cliff from K&W Tire, who's got some really big things that he's cooking, but also the one and only Jamie Lee Thurston going to be sitting down with us, and my God, you never know what we're going to talk about, but he'll be performing and spending some time with us after coming off a real big weekend here in Vermont. Jamie Lee Thurston tomorrow on the podcast. Be well, take good care of one another. We'll catch you next time.